Let's go, baby! Episode, officially, this is episode of Shreveportant. Let's face it, we had episode 0 last week. This is the true first episode of Shreveportant. It wouldn't be a Shreveportant podcast without a Shreveportant guest each and every week, and that's my promise to you. For the first guest, who's more Shreveportant than this guest right here? Tim Huck, ladies and gentlemen. Tim Huck is in the house.
Thank you. I'm not sure I'm the most Shreveportant person, but I appreciate the confidence.
I can't think of anyone more Shreveportant than Tim Huck. Are you kidding me? I've seen the t-shirts, the hashtag I know Tim Huck t-shirts.
I think that started as a joke.
Oh, no, it was not a joke. It might have felt like a joke, but those were the days. I want to thank you for your time today, obviously. When we came up with the idea to do the Shreveportant podcast, you can ask any of my friends that knew kind of about the general idea. I told all of them, I said, well, I know the first guest is going to be, let's figure out who the next 51, will be for the year. So.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Anything that can support the most Shreveportant person, Jay Watley.
No.
And,
what is this, 2012?
But I really only come, honestly, just because I wanted to meet the toe, if you want to know the truth.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Of course, it's not quite a Shreveportant episode without me or without Tim Huck, but it's definitely not an episode without the toe.
The toe is here, and happy to be back.
You're not going to light that cigar in here, are you?
I'm going to try not to.
Because I think there's someone in the room who would not approve.
I won't.
No, we got it. Now he's nervous. But yeah, he's a real person. He exists.
Yeah, I see that.
You got to see him without his robe on, though, today. How was that?
Scary.
Yeah. Usually I'm the only one that gets to see the toe robeless. So it was nice that you came a little bit early and you got to see him as he was getting into his zone. Oh, the huckleberries. That's not that. Have you ever heard that one before? Only about 900 times?
That's the first.
That's the first one, Toe. You did good. You did good. Well, I'll tell you what, Timmy, I know you don't drink, but on the Shreveportant Podcast, we got the keg of Fireball. And yes, that's here and will be here and not paid, by the way. That's just because I like it. So the Toe, if you will, Toe, cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers.
On the Shreveportant. Oh. Very hot, Timmy.
Yeah, there's a cooler downstairs you can keep that in, and then you bring it up. It would be colder.
I tried to put it in my fridge at the house, and I couldn't find a way to wedge it in there.
I have a cooler that it'll fit. That I would probably keep it in there or in a bucket of ice or something. Fireball sounds pretty awful to me, and hot Fireball.
Yeah, I mean it's so hot that you almost don't even taste it's a liquid because it is your body temperature. Does that make sense? You just taste it.
Not really, but we'll say okay.
Luckily, this week and weeks moving forward, I do have something to wash the hot Fireball down with, and today it's 318, and we also have Commotion here as well. Ice Cold 318 and Commotion. Thank you to our friends from Great Rap for joining the program and proving that they are Shreveportant. I think everyone knew they were, though.
They're definitely Shreveportant, without a doubt.
When I think of breweries in the Ark-La-Tex, I feel like they were like the originators, at least when everything kind of started happening with the breweries. I just remember seeing 318s and Great Rap everywhere.
So Great Rap was definitely the first one, and they're also the longest lasting that still sells their products, in stores and package and everywhere else.
Yeah.
The other ones have kind of converted their business models, and Great Rap has stayed the course. So definitely Shreveportant has definitely kept us on the map for having locally brewed beer, and definitely the one that's most well known.
Weddings every Saturday. They have 318s at the weddings. I do it at St. Tier, and 318's always the first beer to go. So they must be doing something right. Enough about everything else. I got the one and only Tim Huck in front of me, and you and I. A lot of people may know this. A lot of people may not know this. We've known each other for a long time.
Since you were not old enough to get in the bars.
That's true. I was at the time working for K94.5 when I met you. I remember when I met you. We did Club SBC Live from Phoenix Underground. Do you remember that?
I do.
And since I wasn't old enough to get into the club, we had a workaround where I would sit, and this is probably pulling the curtain back just a little bit, but I would sit in the K94.5 truck, and we would record me as if I was inside of Phoenix Underground, and we would pipe in club music behind it. because I wasn't technically allowed to get in, but that was our secret for years. We would do that, and people would assume that it was live from the party, and it was. I just wasn't technically inside.
Well, we were all in the party.
Yeah, you were having all the fun, and I was just telling people about the fun. And Mickey the hot dog man and I were just hanging out.
And Jay loved the wiener. I'm just saying.
I've never once denied my love for the wiener. You can't find that on record anywhere.
Mickey slings them everywhere.
He really does. But that was just the beginning of our history. Of course, at that point, I was already familiar with you just because everyone, and I don't mean this as a joke, everyone does know Tim Huck. At that point, let's see, that was probably 2010, maybe even 2008.
Yeah, you were 16 or 17, so it's going to be 2000.
So that was only 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I was only 16.
Well, thought you said we wasn't telling lies. You need to go ahead and start drinking.
Hey, how you doing, 318? At that point, let's assume it was 2008. At that point, how long, because you were already Tim Huck, you already owned, of course, the biggest and the go-to destination nightclub in the Ark-La-Tex. How long have you been at it at that point?
Well, so 92, I started working in the bar industry, sweeping floors, dumping trash cans as a floor walker at Malibu Beach Club.
Wow.
Which is next door to where we're at now, which is kind of awesome. Got to give a shout out to Chad Funge, who was originally hired me to be over there, and was my manager.
I did not know that
Yes,
Chad hired you.
Chad hired me, was my manager. Chad owns Big Country, for those that don't know. He's a very big part in where I'm at today, because he did hire me when I was very young to started out floor walking and security for him at a very young age.
How, you don't have to tell me the exact age, but are we talking 18?
18.
Prior to that, did you have any interest in that kind of world? Like, what led you into that world?
Well, yeah, if you'd asked me at 15 years old what I wanted to do for a living, I told you I was going to own nightclubs.
No way, really?
Yeah, at 15 years old, if you'd asked me, I'd have told you I was going to own a nightclub.
What do you think at that point? What led to that? Because a lot of 15-year-olds are firemen, lawyers, or astronauts. What made Tim Huck want to be a nightclub owner?
Well, lawyers and astronauts had to go to school, and I didn't enjoy school very much, and rats and roaches run out of fire, so I'm not running in to one. And so those things were out of the question. But Studio 54 was big. You had
So just the nightclub industry in that time. You're saying these clubs are so big that a 15-year-old knows about.
Well, there was TV shows and movies. You had Cocktails, which had bartenders who did flair and super popular and made a lot of money. And you had Studio 54 come out on TV, and just a bunch of different shows, different things that basically led me to the desire to throw a party for a living for the rest of my life.
So when you're a floor walker, Tim Huck, I don't know this story, and I just would love to see floor walker Tim Huck, just meet that kid. Was there ever a moment where you said, this isn't for me, or was it always this?
7 or 8 times a night. Every time they said there's throw up by the pool table.
That's great. Well, how long did you do that?
I didn't stay floor walker very long. I worked from floor walker. I went into security and then bar backing, bartending. So I didn't stay very long. It's probably 8 months a year that I floor walked. And but I mean, I worked, whether it be from floor walker to security and bar back for probably 5 years before I got into management.
Wow. But that's pretty good. 5 years in to make that jump to manager. Where did you manage first?
Well, back to Chad. Chad and Travis took me on to manage with them at Screaming Dog and Daddy's Money.
What is?
I'm sorry, not Screaming Dog. Daddy's Money and Planet Soul in Shreve City. And I went from there over to Screaming Dog with Randy, and then I went over to the Congress with Chad. I mean, there was just you can name them, the clubs in town. If it was in town, I've probably worked at it somewhere along the way.
And was there ever an idea, certainly once you got into management, you're bouncing around, and maybe you have, maybe I'm not aware, was there ever an opportunity for you to get out of Shreveport that you jumped at? Did you ever do this anywhere else but right here in Shreveport?
Yes. When I worked for KLM, which was the owners of Rock and Rodeo, I got moved into a district manager position, and I bounced around. They actually would send me to the nightclubs that were having trouble. If they were losing money, their liquor cost was high, their labor cost was high, stuff wasn't working the way it was supposed to, anything going bad, they weren't able to throw the best party, they would send me over to kind of troubleshoot and fix the problems. And I had the opportunity to go to pretty much any of their clubs that were owned by Grams or KLM, but so I traveled a bunch.
So if I'm sorry to interrupt, I didn't realize you were with them at all when they went to that, when Grams kind of got involved in KLM. I didn't know that you were there.
Well, Grams was always involved in KLM. KLM was always involved with Grams. They were sister companies. There were 3 companies that were sister companies, and they did work together. And so I would go with them for some training and stuff. But when they sent me on the road, I could have stayed in any of the clubs that I went and worked at, but Shreveport's just home.
Yeah. Well, I guess I do count that as kind of leaving the Ark-La-Tex, but even then, if you're with Grams, you're still here as well.
Yeah.
And I've known you for a long time, but I never have known you. I've never known in your history to even get out of Shreveport, which is one of the reasons why I think you're the most Shreveported person in Shreveport.
Yeah, no, they got me to travel, but I always had an address in the SBC.
Do you think the toe would be a good security guard?
Oh, without a doubt. We need to wear clothes. Actually,
A black
maybe
robe?
possibly the robe alone. People really don't want to find out what's under it, so they wouldn't tussle with him. There could be some.
They don't want to find out what's underneath it. Trust me.
Unfortunately, I know.
My man doesn't have to carry a firearm. Let's just say that. What do you think of that, Toe?
Sounds like a dream.
He doesn't. You don't even have to pay him. All you have to do is give him Fireball.
Security can't have fireball.
That's true. Maybe that. Yeah, I've never been a security guard. Believe it or not, I know my stature might fool you. It's funny that you mentioned Grams. My first nightclub job was at Grams, and the first official paid working and DJing in a room, and.
Was that the one in Longview?
No, that was, it was over Grams. It was through Grams, but it was at Rock and Rodeo.
Rock and Rodeo, okay.
But so I was at Rock and Rodeo, and I was DJing their downstairs, their country room at the time. And at this point, I was making Christian rap songs. This showed you how wild it was that I got the job. I made Christian rap songs on YouTube. Somebody knew somebody that knew me at the radio station and introduced me to Brent at Rock and Rodeo, and they needed a guy downstairs, but really they didn't need a DJ. They needed a microphone man. They needed somebody that could just talk. And eventually I started DJing for them as well, and eventually ended up upstairs in their room, which is crazy, a full circle kind of deal. At that, I was 16 or 17 at that time. I was young.
Yeah, I think you had to be right at 18.
I think I had
you were
a
18
hardship license, and I don't know if that's what helped me get in, because I was working at the time with 94.5, and then maybe it was a deal they made with them. I don't know. I remember that being an issue in the beginning, but I remember us finding a way around it. I don't remember what that was. But anyways, and because now it's long gone, it's shocking to me how a lot of people in the Ark-La-Tex don't realize how Rock and Rodeo was ran, at least at the time that I was there. And for me, I thought every nightclub made the DJ write down on a spreadsheet what song they played and count how many people danced to it. And then email it off at the end of the night to, this happened. This is how they did it back then. Or when it ran.
Especially in the country bar, not as much in the top 40 rooms, but in the country bar, it's crucially important for not just that particular establishment, but you got to remember that company owned 60 plus clubs nationwide. And so there was a person who actually put those into the spreadsheet and decided how many of each songs needed to be played a night and stuff of that nature. There was actually a method, and it worked really well. And unfortunately, over time, managers got lazier, DJs got away with not doing it, stuff happened, and they don't have many nightclubs anymore.
Yeah. Well, I'm not necessarily throwing shade at that model. I just remember every song I played, immediately go into the computer and I would count heads, which is crazy now because I don't play a song long enough to count the dance floor now. That just would never be able to be a possibility. But in a country bar, it is different. The first gig I had after that was at Chicky's Boom Boom Room in downtown
I remember
Shreveport.
that.
And I remember maybe the first weekend I worked there, I asked Damien, the manager, I said, well, do you want to know how each song did? I wrote some notes down because I assumed that's how every club did it. I said, I have some notes. I don't have the exact figure, and he was like, no, what do you mean? Just keep obviously at that point it was made clear to me that if you're a resident, your job is really just to keep people there as long as possible, and of course keep them happy, yes, but keep them in the room and keep them present. And it was just funny to me going from rock and rodeo to the actual real world of DJing and working in nightclubs.
Well,
And I had no clue you worked there. I didn't know you were there for that.
yeah, I was there obviously before you. Actually, you took the job right after I took the DJ Faber. So you
The
took
legend.
Faber's job right after I brought him over with me.
Wow.
So yeah, that was why that job came open. Is I after I left, I took my star DJ with me, and then I took the star DJ that they made, that they created.
Oh, well, I can just for a moment, because I know we both love DJ Faber. I remember by the time I got to Phoenix Underground, it was so cool, and this is gonna sound so stupid, but it was just so cool to stand next to the dude for 4 hours, and he'll never understand that. Like, if you tell Faber that, he's like, "Oh, shut up," But it's true, and Robbie Atkins as well. I mean, when I started at Phoenix Underground, I was in there with two of the best that has ever done it in downtown Shreveport.
Without a doubt, in downtown Shreveport, there's some that have been in town, but as far as in downtown residents working the number of nights and days and what, those are two of the best that's ever done. I got to give props to RIP DJ Solo, who was also one that was amazing in downtown that wasn't around while you were. By the time you got in, he was out of it. But there's been a couple that were just really great. But yeah, Faber and Robbie were, and you got lucky enough to be able to work with both of them and get trained
Told people
really the right way.
It really helped me out later in life when I would train DJs, because I would train a lot of DJs would come in and they just immediately want to play on prime time, which I get that. I do get it. But I tried to explain to them that, for at least a year at Phoenix Underground, I sat there and ran a strobe light all night to Faber and DJ Dayton or Robbie Atkins mixes. And it's really, I learned so much about just nightclub control and crowd control, just listening to kind of what they did and how they did it and when they did it, that you really can't learn unless you just sit there and listen. And so, yeah, I was very lucky to work with both of them and, of course, work with you. But this ain't about me today. This is about Tim Huck, who's certainly Shreveportant. And there's a little gap that I'm missing that I wanted to fill in. So after Rock and Rodeo and Graham's, at what point did you go for it? What was Phoenix Underground the first nightclub that you owned and operated?
Yes, nightclub. But so right after leaving Rock and Rodeo, one of my mentors, Randy James, called me and was interested in potentially getting back into the bar business. And the what turned into Phoenix Underground was available, and he had just been at an auction, because it was a bar before and it closed, and he had just been at an auction and bought some equipment there. At the auction, he figured out that we could lease the building while he was there. And fortunately, again, I had worked with him at Screaming Dog, Cowboys, over in this building that I have now when it was Bricktown. So I'd worked with Randy before, and he was wanting to partner up and do something. So it was literally right after leaving Rock and Rodeo that we started construction on.
What was Phoenix Underground before it was Phoenix Underground?
It was called the G Spot. It was owned by a guy named Gentry Gamble. Yeah, no guys could find it, so it didn't work out.
No guys knew where that place was, I promise.
But it had failed pretty miserably, and actually that's where the original name of Phoenix came from, because it had failed so bad. I was thinking underground, rising from the ashes, it was going to do great. And so I was thinking the Phoenix bird. Yeah. And then I looked up the definition of Phoenix, and it was a person, place, or thing of unsurpassing excellence and beauty. So I named it after myself.
Of course. Hey, that's what they call two birds with one stone. Right there.
And so we literally started construction on it right away. And I was very fortunate. I had a great crew that helped build it. I had a great mentor who didn't let me rush anything and didn't let me cut any corners, in Randy James. And you know, when we finally got opened, everything worked out. I mean, I couldn't have asked for. I mean, you couldn't have predicted it. I couldn't ask for more. But it's kind of funny when we were building it, I spent every dollar. When I say every dollar I had to my name, I couldn't afford to put gas in my vehicle to drive home each day in between working. So I stayed down in the building for weeks at a time. Friends would bring food to me because I wouldn't leave. We would just stay there and work. And literally, when I say I pushed all in on myself, I pushed all in on myself.
At what point did you know that all-in bet won?
Opening night.
What was that opening night like?
Surreal.
At what point though? Because I know how it is in a nightclub at be here at this time, doors open, and then you kind of just sit there and wait for the rush. At what did you even have to wait on the rush?
No, opening night. So out of money for marketing, got with all the staff, sent out text. Fortunately, I had been at Rock and Rodeo for a little over 3 years and had been at Mojo's and before that, and had the Congress and Millennium nightclub before that, and Malibu. And so you run it all back. I had known a lot of people who went out and knew that I was working on the place. I had put it out there a bunch and talked about it a lot and shown it to a lot of people. So we sent out a bunch of texts and told people, hey, we're going to open this time. It's really kind of crazy, but we were vacuuming the floor, putting tables and chairs in places, trying to get all the tools out the back door as people were walking in the front door. It literally had people coming in the minute we were opening. There were people waiting outside. We didn't have a choice but to open on time because you really wanted to be like set on time. And so literally, like, all of my work staff is pulling stuff out of the back, and I'm in the back trying to put on a suit, which you never see me wear anymore. But I was in the back trying to put on a suit. I did wear a suit my opening night for sure. But I was trying to get dressed and look ready for the opening. But yeah, without a doubt, you knew when you opened the doors, when we turned the lights off and the sound on. We knew for sure that what we had done was going to work.
And how long did it last? How long was Phoenix Underground number one?
It was number
Longer
one.
than any other nightclub.
It was number one for about 9 years. It lasted a little over 10 years, and I honestly should have done a 10-year anniversary and closing party the same day. But it lasted a little over 10 years. What's the average lifespan on in general a nightclub in an area like Shreveport? Well, you really can't say because a nightclub without a remodel, without a name change, without anything, to stay at the level that Phoenix did for as long as it did is unheard of. But 3 or 4 years you can ride on top, and you can usually survive longer than that. There have been clubs that have lasted, a lot longer. Right. But as far as a nightclub, the size of Phoenix and needing the number of people that Phoenix had, to ride on top for that long is unheard of. No one's ever done it before. I'm glad and you took a very humble approach there, but I was going to interrupt you to not be humble. I mean, it is unheard of that a club can exist, especially in the prime that Phoenix Underground did. Phoenix Underground is around. You got to understand, there's also 15 other options. It's a lot different than it is now. We'll get into that in a minute. At that point, you could go anywhere else, and yet everyone went to Phoenix Underground. So I cheers to a decade with DJ Timmy. What's your DJ name again? I know it. You got a good one. Incredible Huck.
DJ Incredible Huck. Cheers to him and to the toe.
Cheers, Jay.
Get you off guard over there with that? You didn't see that coming, did you?
Not at all.
Thinking about all the fun times you had at Phoenix Underground. That's what's happening.
The fact that he can remember them is shocking.
He can only remember a small percentage, right?
Time I can remember, guest of the toe brought her boyfriend, and he was hit in the back of the head with a chair. So we got out of there. But then we came right back in because we love the Phoenix.
Happened somewhere else. I don't know if that happened.
No, that probably happened at Phoenix. When in its heyday, you put 1,000 people in a building that supposed to hold 300. It just leads to. Well, and
to be fair, you never skimped on security. I mean, there was a security guard in every square inch of that place.
Well, you didn't have a choice. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it was able to survive as long as it was. You're never going to not have a confrontation. It's how quickly can you get it over with? How quickly can you get it done? And how much can I keep other people from being affected by it? Yeah. And so the security is a necessity. It's just an expense that you can't afford not to spend.
Right. And I've seen many places make that mistake and not go all in on security, and they ultimately, maybe that's one of the reasons that there's not a lot of places that last outside of that 2-3 year honeymoon period.
You also have to remember this: musicians usually bring a lot of live entertainment, and DJs usually try to cater and bring in a lot of DJs. Well, I started this business as security, and so I have a big respect for security because it's kind of where I got, where I cut my teeth. So
yeah, I wouldn't mess with you in a heartbeat, man. I bet you were a great security guard.
I'm old and.
Hey, have you ever had to play security guard while working as an owner of Phoenix? That ever came into
Unfortunately, I still go back to that mindset because of how I started in security, and so I still do get involved in security as much as I wish that I could not, and I also wish that I didn't have to.
Yeah.
So there's a mixture of both, but
well, listen, I brought that up to say I can think of a small handful of moments where it was just you, me, and maybe somebody who needed to be put in their place in that moment, and I'm like, I can't do this. Like, and I remember kind of like, Tim, please help me out, and but you never once did not. You always, and it's not aggression, it's more like you need a security guard presence a lot in a nightclub, even sometimes when there's not security guards around. And I just know you were never, a lot of owners, I'm sure, maybe wouldn't. And you were always fine to step in and help me out when I needed it.
Well, unfortunately, like I said, I wish I did, and I'd probably be better off. But I do still help with security. But also, a lot of times, me stepping in, get stuff calmed down pretty quick. They have a little bit more respect for me as the owner than they do as one of my employees, which I wish they would respect my employees, the fact that I gave the employee the job. Yeah. So by respecting my employees, actually showing respect to me.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you'll find a person gives me more respect than one of my employees. Yeah. So a lot of times me stepping in can de-escalate a lot faster.
A lot faster than it would, 3 or 4 security guards. I didn't think about it like that. That makes sense. I want to talk about post-Phoenix, but before we do, there's 2 more Phoenix Underground things I want to talk about. One, I don't know if you get this as much as I get this. I would say maybe at a 70% rate, when people bring up Phoenix Underground to me, they all say, I remember that place. I remember the beds. Do you get that a lot?
Yes, I do. The beds seemed like the greatest idea in the world. So, when we built the original Phoenix Underground and the new Phoenix, I want it to feel like you're not in Shreveport. The whole goal is when you walk in, you feel like you have transported somewhere else. You have gone somewhere else. I find that people, when they go to Dallas, when they go to Miami, when they go to Vegas, when they go other places, they go out and their mindset is, we're going to have fun, we're going to spend money, we're going to have a good time. And I want them to have that same mindset when they get here. And so I try to make it feel like it's not Shreveport. And at the time, Club Bed was a chain of clubs in big cities. Okay. I mean, they were in Miami. They were everywhere, and they were in big cities. And it was kind of a concept that they did, kind of like chill in the club. If you remember, the beds had moving tables that went on the bed, and you bought bottle service with the bed. And, the goal was to kind of sit around, not necessarily be in a booth. And it was also, I had this big vacant area that literally had no value to the club at all. And there was nothing you could do to make it valuable.
I loved it though, for that reason. I'm glad that you brought that up. Like, what I think in time people have forgotten is that, beds in a nightclub today are a little bit different than beds in a nightclub were back then. Like, to me, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing ever. And I saw on the back end of it how hard you worked and everybody worked to keep those perfect. I mean, those beds were clean, and don't let time derail your opinion.
Oh, no,
They were perfect beds.
Yeah, no, they were, and they were used for what they were used for. They weren't used for inappropriate, they weren't used for anything. I'm not saying no one ever passed out on them, because that did happen. But they did do bottle service. So
I'm just glad that you have that same thing. I have it all the time. People are like, I just remember those beds.
But you have to remember, hindsight, it was probably an absolutely horrible idea. I can admit that I have had some horrible ideas over the years. This one was a horrible idea I stole from someone else, and it probably worked better where they were than it worked where I was. However, I don't believe that chain is still operating, so it might have been a horrible idea for them too.
Maybe it eventually, I think in hindsight, a lot of things changed, but I just remember in the moment it was not that big of a deal. So for me, in hindsight, obviously, a lot of people ring it up, and I'm like, yeah, I wonder why we did have beds in there. But
Well, I added 4 what I consider to be VIP areas, which was 4 more people who bought bottles, and if you pre-reserved, and they worked for a long time until they didn't, and literally they went from working to not working overnight, but they also went away as soon as they were not profitable.
As soon as you know, well, that's why you're
as soon as I realized
but
it.
that's why you're great, and that's why you've been so successful. Is that I think I've seen you do that with so many more things. Obviously, where the beds are funny, but there's a lot of serious things as well where you're so good at this that the second you realize the tide has turned, you immediately switch. And I think a lot of owners maybe don't have that vision.
Well, I think that I don't take myself so seriously, and I'm not always 100% right. So I'm able to look and say, like, man, what the hell was I thinking? And go another direction fairly quickly. But in an ever-changing world in the industries that we're in, you really don't have a choice but to be able to do that. But yeah, I can say, man, I messed up and get off of it quick.
Once again, just a reminder, it's the Shreveportant Podcast. Thank y'all for watching. I consider this episode 1. We did have our episode last week, but I count that as episode 0. And I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to Great Rap for coming on board, for being Shreveportant, and of course, so many 318s, I can't even talk, Timmy, for providing these delicious 318s and the commotions, which I see Johnny, the toe is, sorry. Who's Johnny? That's not you. Wow. I'm going to tell a story now, and this is my final Phoenix Underground story. And if you're mad at me for telling this, then stop me halfway through. Because I've told this story in private quite a few times. I've probably told it in private 10 or 15 times. But I've never told it in public. And to me, it's the greatest Tim Huck story that I have. It's the greatest one that I know. And you'll remember this. We were approaching the very, very end of Phoenix Underground. And I think the writing was on the wall for a lot of folks. At that point, I think I had to be 20, 21. I had a newborn daughter. River had just been born. Maybe, I don't remember the months, but she was within within a year. Anyways, one night, pretty slow night. It was like maybe 3:30 or 4 in the morning. Tim Huck comes up to the DJ booth and he says, "Jay, come with me real quick." And that never happens. You never get pulled off the booth. Unless you deserve to get pulled off the booth. And so Tim and I are walking. We had worked together for a long time at that point, though, so I feel like, I was a little nervous, but at the same time, I was like, I don't know. I don't really know what to think. And we went upstairs, up the elevator, and you asked me to take a ride with you. Do you remember this?
I do remember it.
Which is horrifying, right? You're a boss, and a friend, yes, but a boss says, hop in my truck, take a ride with me. And I was like, this is the end. I'm getting taken out to pasture. And we drove around downtown Shreveport, and we basically did a big circle. And you had told me that you had decided to close Phoenix Underground. And you said we have X amount of weeks left. Maybe it was 1 week or 2 weeks.
1 weekend left.
Yeah, it was like next weekend or last weekend. And it was horrifying for me because... And you knew that we talked a lot about it when of course, Casey was pregnant and we had a kid on the way. It was a lot of stress, and then maintaining this nightclub lifestyle after she was born. And I just really needed the money. I had a newborn child, and that money was super important to me. And I just remember us driving, and you said that you had a plan. You said we are going to close Phoenix next week, but you said that we are going to renovate. At that point, I believe it was a storage area.
It was.
The sandbar.
It was.
You said we're going to renovate the storage area at the sandbar. We're going to turn it into its own nightclub within the sandbar. We're going to call it the Vault. You already had all this mapped out, and but we were months away from that opening. And I don't know if you remember this, but
I do.
You told me, you said every Monday you swing by the sandbar, pick up a check for the exact amount that you would be making here at Phoenix if we remained open until we opened the Vault. And that, I can tell you, I can be 80 years old and I will remember how much that meant to me, because there was no reason you had no reason to do that. No.
Well, but I did. So I remember it very well. You and 2 bartenders were the only ones that I took over there to tell them what we were going to do and what adjustments we were going to make. It was the people that I felt brought the most value to my business and the people that I felt I had to keep. Some of the other bartenders brought a lot of value to my business, but they could afford to no longer work for me or not draw a check from me. They could afford to do something else or to not have that income.
Yeah.
You and two others could not afford not to have that income. And then I also had Will, who came over with me, who couldn't have afforded. So there was 4 total people who couldn't afford to lose the income. And so one thing that I've learned a long time ago is if I take care of people, people take care of me. I've never called Jay that Jay didn't answer the phone. I've never needed Jay that Jay didn't come through.
Maybe after a big Dallas Cowboys win, I see Tim Huck on my phone, and maybe I don't take that call. Maybe that's the only one I don't take.
I would never call you after the Cowboys win, but unfortunately this season we don't have any of those. So we don't have to worry about it this year. I was happy. Now I'm depressed.
I do love
the
the Timmy calls after the Cowboys lose. I answer those on the first ring.
But the idea was to not have a nightlife entertainment venue still in downtown. It was time. The writing was on the wall. Actually, the week that I did that with you was the first week in the existence of Phoenix that I wrote a check back into Phoenix to cover all of the bills. And I promised myself that I would not chase the glory days and spend every dollar that I had earned over the years, give it all back, chasing to get the glory day back. And so when I realized that the turnaround was more expensive and more difficult than I was willing to do, I made that decision. I remember that trip very well.
I remember it turn for turn, just because I remember the initial. I mean, I remember the feeling in my body when you. And don't get me wrong, there was certainly writing on the wall. There was a turn, really, and just in general, the way people would go out. They don't go out like they went out 4 years prior to that car ride.
Well, we'll go backwards a little bit. If you remember, at Phoenix, we did the first ever Shreveportant MySpace party. Yeah. So if you joined our MySpace, if you liked our MySpace page, if you were Tim Huck's friend or Phoenix's friend on MySpace, you got into the party. You had to be a friend on MySpace. There was no social media. It was the first time MySpace. And so I'd heard about MySpace from a bar nightclub convention that other bars were doing this, and I stole the idea. I didn't create the wheel. I just took a wheel that was already and used it. And so by the time this had come around, you had Facebook and MySpace and everything else. And so the whole nightlife industry changed. And originally we thought this is going to be the greatest thing ever because now we can get information to people for free. We don't have to pay for radio. We don't have to do flyers. We don't have to do this. We can just get information to people this way. Yeah. But what also ends up happening is over time, we have become so instant gratification. We go eat at a restaurant. We want our food to us right away. We pre-order to get our coffee and drive-thrus instead of waiting on those. I mean, we can't even wait on the Subway guy to make our sandwich. We pre-order it and want to walk in and grab it off the shelf. We want instant gratification, and we have instant communication. So now, when we first opened Phoenix and when Cowboys or Rock and Rodeo or all these other places were in existence, people went somewhere and waited on the party, and they brought the party with them, and they created the party. And if they walked in and there was 30 or 40 people, they just enjoyed themselves with those 30 people. Yeah. Now they walk in and they don't see a crowd, and they text all their friends, this place is dead, we're going to go to another place. And they keep doing that until they find a place that actually has people, or until everyone gives up and goes home. Yeah. And this has been a more consistent occurrence. And I'm good and bad in ways. I like large clubs. I don't like small bars. Small bars, 30, 40 people is great. You got a party. My size clubs, the original Phoenix Underground, the new Phoenix 2.0, Sandbar, all of my clubs are big. Yeah. And when you have a big club with 14, 15, 16, 25,000 square feet, 30, 40 people look empty. And so if you remember, Phoenix, we would get 100 people through the door, but 0 would stay because they'd walk in, there'd be no one there, and they'd turn around and walk out. Yeah. And
they'd walk in at 10:30 and 11, and I remember it wasn't, at least when I started, at 9:30, 10, 10:30, sometimes it wouldn't be busy, of course, because it's Friday or Saturday night, it's early, but everyone would always end up at Phoenix Underground.
Right.
Always, and I think you nailed it. I think what I noticed is people would come in early and leave, and they'd bounce around and be like, well, let's just go to the casino. you know, and we just wouldn't see him.
Right, and they text their friends, so they changed their plans, and so what you had to do to operate nightclubs has changed, and so those things really did affect what was going on, and so we made the move with Phoenix. But there was a lot of pluses to it. But why I wanted to take you over there and show you, so I could tell you my vision while you saw it instead of you just hearing about it. To maybe comfort you. I knew that I knew you had a baby, you had another one on the way. I knew that the money was crucial to your supporting your family.
Well, I was a radio DJ, Timmy. I don't know if you know, the radio DJs aren't exactly swimming in money like Donald Duck, but it meant a lot to me then. But now I just think I constantly look back on it, and I don't know how I get through that period if that car ride and that, because you didn't have, I didn't ask for it. And you didn't have to give that to me, and I have no clue where I end up without that.
Well, the good thing is I do, even with as many businesses I own, as many employees I have, I kind of know what's going on with each of them in their lives, and I knew who had to have it, and that was just, it was, you know, at that particular time I could afford it, and it was the right thing, and it worked out well for everybody. It got you through. When we opened the vault, you were my resident DJ over there, and it worked. It was very successful. And even though you've been back and forth with me a couple of times since then, we've always, you leaving has never affected our friendships or anything of that nature. We've always been able to stay very both personally and professionally connected, and so really at the end of the day, it worked out well all the way around.
And I think the few times we got. That's another thing that I respect about you, man. I hate blowing smoke up your butt, so don't feel like I'm making your like I'm just because you're doing this episode with me that I'm saying things that I have not said in private to many people. Every time that something would come up in my life that maybe would take me away from what we had going on, I always told you about it, and most of the time you always said, "Well, yeah, you'd be an idiot if you didn't take that deal." You know.
Well, you know, every job I ever left, I left for more money or better opportunity, and I believe that if you have the opportunity to leave me for more money or a better opportunity, I would be holding you back, and that's not a good mentor. That's not a good boss. And so I don't like to tell the other people's businesses, but I can tell you two of my very close friends who I desperately needed, who worked for me, who I fired both of them because they had better opportunities, and they wouldn't take them. One of them's wife called me and said, he's got this opportunity, but he won't leave you. I took him to lunch after I hung up with his wife and fired him, so he would go take the other opportunity.
Wow.
And then another one who's doing extremely successful, graduated from college and had a job offer, and he's like, I'm not leaving you. And I was like, dude, if you were going to stay working for me, you didn't need to finish college, so go take the job. And then shortly, 5 years ago, I built him a $500,000 house, and I guarantee you that working for me wasn't going to build him a $500,000 house.
He wouldn't have bought that house.
No, he wouldn't have got that house.
But I just know that you and I can talk. We can do a 5-hour episode. I did want to talk about even really post Phoenix Underground, and there was a gap. There's a pretty big gap. How many years between Phoenix Underground and Phoenix 2?
I want to say there's 4 years between Phoenix Underground and Phoenix 2.0, maybe 4 or 5. It was a while.
Tell me about Phoenix 2. Tell me about, and tell me what you can tell me, but tell me about securing the space because it's gorgeous. And tell me about maybe the struggles.
I didn't even want the space.
Tell me about the struggles. Tell me about the big wins with Phoenix.
I'll go first of all how I got the space. I didn't even want it. The bank had some issues and ended up with ownership of it. With COVID, there was a lot of factors, a lot of things figured in. Bank ends up owning the property. It's a bank that I do a lot of business with. In case you don't know, I own a construction company, a cleaning service, investment company, about 80 rental properties, No Teeny's Italian restaurant, Phoenix and Sandbar. Yeah. So obviously to do this, to start where I started, to sweeping floors and dumping trash cans at a bar, to where I'm at, you don't do that without building some relations. And one of my relations I have is with a bank that I do a lot of business with. Well, the bank had the building, and the bank called me up. They had it listed for sale, and I was the keeper, so I was in charge of maintaining the building, but I was getting paid by the bank to do so. The bank called me and said, Tim, what would you give me for the building? I said, I don't even want it. They said, well, throw a price at me. And so I threw a ridiculously low price that I knew without a doubt they weren't going to take.
Yeah. You knew for sure they
But
wouldn't
I was
take it.
100% positive in my mind at this moment that this number was not going to be taken. And I actually figured they were going to be insulted. And
Wow.
he said, I'll take it. And the problem is that I felt as though I was under a verbal contract that I had created.
Yeah.
Whether it
They're
be
not going to accept this.
right, I didn't think there's any chance they were going to accept it, but
Wow.
the number was low enough that when they said yes, I had to take it. Well, so I took it, and then I walked in the building the next day, like, what the hell have I just done? And we closed on it 18 days later, and I started construction. And not sure how it ended up where it is or what it was. Originally, I didn't even know what I was going to name it. Didn't know what my format was going to be. Didn't have a concept. Didn't have anything. But as I started cleaning up and visualizing things, I decided that I wanted the heyday of Phoenix back, and I felt as though it was going to be an easier marketing strategy to be able to just call it Phoenix again, mixing my name with it because everyone knows Tim Huck and everyone knows Tim Huck from Phoenix.
Everyone remembers Phoenix
And
Center.
so, and then the younger people who never got the chance to experience Phoenix and a lot of different things. And so that's how it kind of recreated to what it is today. It's never been what Phoenix Underground was. However, that's not to say that it's not as good. It's different.
I was going to say that just from my perspective, and I was involved with Phoenix too right in the beginning. 6 a.m. is hard on me, man. I'm getting old.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it every weekend. For me, when I come in, because I still come in often, it's great, but it's a different thing than what Phoenix Underground was, which is a good thing. It really is.
You know, it's hard to recreate. There's a lot of ways it's better. First of all, it's cleaner.
Yeah.
It smells a million times better. Yeah. It's got so much more room. It's actually way nicer, honestly. Most people don't remember the original Phoenix and just how nasty it was being underground. I mean, you know, there was just, you could clean that sucker all week long and it was still going to be, you know, somewhat dirty, mildew, water leaking from the parking lot, which was actually the ceiling or the roof. There was just never a chance to be able to get that place perfectly clean and make it as nice as it should have been. People remember it was before its time for Shreveport, but it was definitely nowhere close to what this place is. This place is so much more and so much better. But it's such a different time, you know. There's not as many people go out.
Well, I wanted to talk about that, and just before, that was one of the things I had to talk about. Is obviously I see that too every weekend. I see like Friday nights just kind of being a little iffy, hit and miss. But at the same token, it's odd to me, and I always complain. You can ask people that I work with every weekend. I say the same line every week. I don't understand where they're at on Friday night and why they're all here on Saturday night, because all of them are with us, with you or I. With you and I, most Saturday nights, they all are every Saturday. So what are they doing on Friday?
Well, they're working Friday day, and so they're sleeping earlier on Friday. The problem is we moved the times later in Shreveport Bossier, and people go out later, and so people go eat and go home. People go somewhere that closes earlier and goes home because they'd worked Friday. You know, they worked Thursday, then they worked Friday, and then, you know, they have something to do Saturday morning. They have something to do, you know, Saturday afternoon, but they worked Friday and they're sleeping Saturday. Yeah. Or they're sleeping Friday night so that they can be functional Saturday. They didn't work Saturday and they don't work Sunday, and they generally don't have a lot to do Sunday. So nationally Saturday is the biggest night out. Yeah. But Friday, you know, you do get, you know, some people who are ready to get their whole weekend. But if you work Friday and you have anything at all to do Saturday, you get your sleep in. Yeah. If you don't have anything to do, you know, 50-50 chance I may go out. But remember, I put in an 8-hour day today, so yeah. I'm a little bit tired, and they didn't, you know, and so Fridays has always been hit and miss. Even if you go back to Rock and Rodeo, if you remember, Thursday was big for Rock and Rodeo,
right?
It was that quarter $1.25 long neck quarter drinks or whatever. Thursday used to be a pretty big night at Rock and Rodeo, and then Friday was always hit and miss, and then Saturday was a big night. Yeah. When it was Cowboys, Wednesday was a big night. then Thursday was hit or miss, and then Friday hit or miss, and Saturday big. But it's never, most people, or a lot of people, we have a select few that'll party Friday and Saturday. But if you only get one day, if you're going to, budget's going to allow you one day to go out. Your budget and your time's going to allow you one day.
Yeah.
You don't want a day that you worked 8 hours and you're tired. You want a day that you're totally refreshed. You got to sleep in late, and so you're able to stay out later and actually get your dollar value of your party. And so that's why Saturday is the party night and Friday is what we think should be the party night, because our mind says it's both the weekend. And if they're going out of town or something, then Friday is their party night. But if you're going to stay in town and we're going to do the same thing we're going to do Saturday, after pulling just an 8-hour shift,
I think a lot of people just go to dinner on Friday, and then they all come out on Saturday though. They
all come out Saturday. Saturday is still the slam dunk.
Well, they got to see your face and my face. I think that's what they really deal with. If we want to be honest, I think forget our budget, forget anything, meeting people. They just want to see you and they want to see me.
Well, I'm worried about the podcast because you definitely have a face for radio.
That's true. This might be an audio only podcast very soon. It might be. I have 2 final questions. Thank you for coming in. Really, it means a lot. What's the worst thing about being Tim Huck in 2024? What's the best thing about being Tim Huck in 2024?
The worst thing about being Tim Huck is I can't keep my mouth shut. When I feel a way about something, I'm passionate about something. I see something, I can't get off of it. Sometimes I even know but I can't keep my mouth shut. I had a news station call me a while back and they said, hey, we're doing a story about this. And I wanted to know if you had an opinion on it, if you're willing to share it. And I was like, you must be new to town because I have an opinion on everything and I'm always willing to share it. And that is not always a great thing. It causes you some problems. For everyone that you'll find that hates me, you'll find someone that loves me. And unfortunately, with as public as I have always been, I've not been a very private person. I don't hide from controversy. And that's not always the best way to be. There's obviously a better path to take. It's not the path I choose. I live my life unapologetically me.
When I announced you last week, I said our first guest, I think, and I do believe this with my whole heart, I think one of the most respectable things about you, and the way I describe you a lot, is that you're relentlessly Tim Huck.
I'm relentlessly Tim Huck.
And but I don't think that's a negative thing. I think if people can take their own personal opinions out of it, they have to respect that.
Well, they don't have to respect it. A lot of people choose to respect it. People don't have to do anything. Yeah. Fortunately, we're still a free country. Voting is coming up November 5th. I bet most people can guess who I'm going to tell them to vote for. But
you host your podcast, man. We already have a name for it.
We got a name for it. I'm ready to go.
I got the cameras.
I'm ready to go whenever you when you tell me when we can get the toe to sit down with us.
Toe, you want to produce it?
The Toe would like to take this time to officially dub this man the Huck.
Oh, the Toe just changed his name.
Well, we got our name for it. So, but that's actually not 100% a positive thing. The best thing about being me is, fortunately, I do get to live my life the way I want to. But I have created real friendships, real relationships that never have failed me, and that you're just. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm blessed. Luck is sometimes where skill meets opportunity, takes advantage of it. And I've had a lot of opportunities. I live in Shreveport, Louisiana, or I live in Benton, but, Shreveport, Bossier, Benton, they all, blend into one. They're all Shreveportant, hopefully. But we, by living in this area, it's very reasonable to, it's not expensive to live here as much as it is somewhere else. I have a lot of friends. If I call people, if I need a hand, I'm able to get it. But by being the businesses I have, being self-employed, kind of, I do get to live life on my terms. So obviously, kind of what's good and bad are kind of mixed in together and kind of the same. Yeah.
I respect you so much. I think that the city of Shreveport and our Ark-La-Tex in general, I think it's vastly different without your presence. and the things you've done for the community. I think a lot of people, a lot of their memories are night and day different. Who knows what kind of life they would have lived, or where they would have went, or what kind of times they would have had without Tim Huck being around in Shreveport. So for me, I said it at the top, I'll say it at the bottom. No one is more Shreveported than you, and thank you for coming on today, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
For sure.
All right. Well, next time, maybe I can get you to drink some Fireball.
Probably not.
Maybe some great rafting.
Well, I just don't drink at all. Not anything. So it's not anything against Great Raft or Fireball or anything else. I just don't drink anything.
Tim Huck is Shreveportant. The Toe is Shreveportant too, and you're Shreveportant. Thank you for listening. This is the, of course, first episode number 1. Episode 0 was last week. Who cares about that one? Next week we have the originator of the word Shreveportant. You don't even know about this. We got Pete John is going to be on as our second guest for next week's episode.
That is awesome, and he is definitely more Shreveportant than me.
He's more Shreveportant than me. I was in the room when the guy said Shreveportant for the first time, and currently he's doing great things with Dilla's Quesadillas, but he's another guy that, of course, Shreveport is a little bit different without Pete John in it. So we'll have Pete John here next Friday. Toe, thank you. Anything you'd like to say before we wrap?
The Toe is feeling toasty with these commotions. Love it. Thank you, Great Raft. Appreciate you.
I'm telling you, Shreveport's a little less Shreveportant without you, man. Thank you. Tim Huck, our guest today. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you.